What if I told you there was once a ruler who built an empire not with justice, but with terror? A man so feared, his very name made grown men tremble. Deep beneath the royal palace of Kabul, prisoners were burned, crushed, drowned, and left to rot in total darkness. This isn't fiction. This is not a horror movie. This is the true story of one of history's most ruthless rulers, the Iron Emir. Abdur Rahman Khan, born into the Barakzai dynasty, returned from exile in 1880 to claim a broken throne. Afghanistan was in chaos, torn apart by tribal wars, British interference, and decades of instability. He seized control not with diplomacy, but through iron-fisted rule. They didn't call him the Iron Emir for nothing. He centralized power, crushed tribal leaders, and brought Afghanistan under a brutal kind of unity. But behind the throne, something darker was happening. Under the royal palace in Kabul, the Emir constructed a network of secret dungeons. These weren't just jail cells. They were laboratories of fear, torch-lit, airless, carved into stone. Prisoners were led down winding tunnels where no one ever returned. Some rooms were narrow enough only to stand. Others were filled with rats. It wasn't a prison. It was a mechanism of terror. Victims were stripped, bound, and beaten with heated iron rods until their flesh blistered and peeled. The burns weren't meant to kill, they were meant to brand. Survivors, if released, became living warnings. One former soldier described seeing men with their backs scorched like cooked meat. It wasn't punishment, it was psychological warfare. Steel cages dangled from the palace towers like lanterns. Inside, rebels, thieves, scholars, even poets, left suspended for days and nights in freezing wind or blazing sun. Villagers watched as birds pecked at their open wounds. It wasn't just pain, it was public humiliation. Some say even children were made to walk past, so they'd grow up fearing the throne. Imagine this, gallons of water forced down your throat while you're tied to a wooden board. Then, soldiers stomp on your stomach until your insides rupture. This was an early, crude version of water torture, centuries before modern waterboarding. One British doctor wrote, "Those who survive lose the will to speak for life." The Emir didn't just break bodies, he shattered souls. A custom-made wooden press with iron screws. It slowly crushed knees, elbows, fingers, bone by bone. Screams echoed through the palace floors. Executioners wore masks, not to hide their faces, but to feel less human while doing their job. Sometimes they'd let the prisoner survive, just to repeat the process the next week. Then came the worst fate, a deep, lightless shaft known only as the silence hole. Prisoners were dropped in without warning. No trial, no sentence. They were forgotten. No food, no light, no sound. Some went mad within days. Others died quietly. Those who lived too long were buried alive. It wasn't just a pit, it was a place erased from time. Some reports speak of a room where prisoners were blinded with hot needles. Others mention a rotating cage that spun continuously for hours, inducing madness. One guard confessed in old age, it was not justice, it was fear disguised in royal clothes. And the most terrifying part? These methods weren't secret, they were meant to be remembered. British officers stationed in Kabul, Indian colonial agents, and Afghan scholars left behind chilling records. One 1893 observer famously wrote, "Kabul's palace is not a court, it is a graveyard for the living." An Indian envoy described seeing prisoners dragged like animals, their mouths sewn shut. Afghan poet Syed Jamal al-Din al-Afghani wrote veiled verses about a king whose crown drips with tears. Why such brutality? The Iron Emir believed only terror could control Afghanistan. In a land of fierce tribes and outside enemies, he saw mercy as weakness. His logic, break a few to control the many. It worked. Rebellions were rare. Order was maintained, at a terrible cost. But what happens when fear becomes law? The Emir's tactics became a template. Future Afghan leaders, from kings to communists to warlords, borrowed his cruelty. Even during the Soviet occupation and Taliban rule, torture chambers reappeared in new forms. The shadows of those dungeons never left. Fear had become tradition. Historians debate, was the Iron Emir simply a product of his violent age? Or did he go beyond what was necessary? Some praise his centralization of power and independence from Britain. But others ask, at what price did he buy peace? Afghanistan's history is written not just in battles, but in screams no one heard. The Iron Emir may be gone, but the echo of his dungeon still rumbles beneath Kabul. His throne is dust, but his methods still whisper through corridors of power. Was he a unifier or a monster? The truth lies somewhere in the dark. Subscribe for more untold history. Comment below. Could Afghanistan have been unified without such horror? Or was the Iron Emir the only man who could hold it together?